Ooh, setting up webinar for Facebook Live, and yet it says over here that it's now streaming live. So I don't know what the heck's going on. I'm just gonna wait. I'm gonna play this cool. Facebook's loading. Okay, and it's loaded. I'm gonna trust that this is working, guys. Hopefully you can see, you know what? I'm not gonna trust. I don't trust Facebook, not a damn inch. I'm gonna click to make sure, because all it did was loaded my Facebook stream, which I don't find helpful at all. If I go here, do I get to see a video of Adam Quiney? There's photos of me. Oh no, there we go. Okay, so we're live. Cool. I don't know if I have to, do I have to click here to see the, let's do that anyhow. And then I will mute that so I don't explode the internet. Muted. Okay, I think we're all set. I think it's happening now. So a lot of energy in my body just as a starting point. I'm doing a new format for our lives because, well, frankly, because I'm bored of the old format, and I think maybe that old format is bored too, like kind of bored of me. And so one thing that feels exciting and scary, and often I really believe fear and possibility show up in partnership. They show up together. The thing that's driving that up for me right now is like, let's work with people live. Let's actually create the experience of coaching and leadership in the moment, because there are millions of people talking about this stuff. It's easy to talk about. It is not hard to talk about leadership. You, whoever you are, I can say with confidence, knowing nothing about you, if you're watching this video, you can write a book about leadership. And the reason for that is that it's an easy thing to write about. It's an easy thing to talk about, and it's a hard thing to create in the moment. And so I want to model the thing that's hard. I want to model the experience of leadership, the experience of coaching, the experience of transformation, rather than talking about it. So having said that, I made that decision, and then I woke up today and was like, fuck, why did I do that? And I think Heather, who is with us and will come on, I'll bring her on in a sec, but is going to play with me. I think probably on some level, she might be thinking that too. So I'll share briefly how this is going to go, what we're going to do. Then we'll bring Heather on, and we'll see where it takes us. So the format here is that I come on live, you watch me for about 5 minutes, bumble around on Facebook while I try to sort everything out and see if it's working. We're almost at the end of that part. And then I'll bring someone on. Today it's celebrity guest Heather Beaton. By the way, it's always going to be a celebrity guest. So if you're one of the people that are on with me, you're a celebrity guest. It's pretty cool. And and then we'll start to dive into coaching. That'll be about 50 minutes to an hour, give or take. And then we'll go for an extra half hour where we debrief. So any questions that you have watching this, please share those in the comments. They're really valuable, and give us like an awesome opportunity to kind of jam on this stuff. And Heather and I will talk about like, hey, here's what we noticed. And I'll share, this is some of what I saw, some of the reasons I went this way. Heather might, or whoever it is during that particular day, might share like, I thought this was weird, or I was surprised, or I think you're a terrible coach for these reasons, Adam, or you're the best coach in the world, and I don't need to give any reasons, it's totally evident, or whatever. So let me just check in. Let me first have a sip of tea. We're still doing that. That's not changing. And I think without further ado, we're going to bring Heather on, and she and I are going to dive in. So Heather, will you turn your video and your audio on? There you are. Boom. There's your audio. How's it going?
Good, good.
Awesome. So we're live. This is cool, hey?
Totally not.
It's so great. Heather said to me, I can't remember how you worded it, something like, I'm totally in, and I'm terrified and super scared. And I wrote, me too. We can do this together. So I'll start by saying, I think that's one of the things I share with my clients whenever we get through all of the conversation about hiring and actually start working together, is that a lot of fear comes up for me. And that's because now we're going to really experience intimacy together. And I think that's really, if coaching always feels safe, one, I often hear people that are in that sort of situation, those sort of coaches report that they're quite bored and they think they need a bigger, better, different client. And also, we're probably not playing very powerfully together if it's always safe. So at least for me, it's often quite a scary experience. And I'm excited to have you here and be scared with me, because that's not just me.
Yeah, I get that it's fairly normal for most people.
Yeah, but have you noticed that knowing that doesn't seem to make it feel any better?
Yeah, totally. And that's actually annoying.
Yeah, totally. What a pile of bullshit.
Totally.
So anyhow, I say we dive right on in. Is there anything you want to share or say before we do that?
Nope. I think that for me, just jumping in is pushing past my resistance. And you were talking one day about resistance. I think it was in your last tea time. And so that's what I'm trying to do with this and being in the forge and everything else, is just pushing past my own resistance, because I know that that is my biggest enemy.
I love that. Are you okay if I take some notes while we talk too, Heather?
Sure.
Cool. Okay, so what are you bringing? What are we gonna talk about, play with, coach around, take a look at?
Okay, so what I wanted to talk about today was I left the corporate world a year and a half ago.
Congrats.
Thank you. And had been coaching off the side of my desk for quite a while, like at home, but like not full time, because I was working full time and had a very senior role. And then I left and am working at this full time now. And what I find is my partner has been off because he was injured, and he's been recovering. And I continuously tend to, and this is about me, not him being off, but it makes it worse for me, in that I tend to defer my priorities, which is time, and to his needs. And it's not even, it's not that he's demanding them. That's what I do. And it's getting in my way. So I'm not creating the consistency I want. I'm not like, I'm a very dedicated, hardworking, committed person. That's not an issue for me, but I feel like I'm a bit easily pulled away.
That makes total sense. I totally get that.
Can I say one more thing? Is that my tendency is to, I don't like the word workaholic, but to be extreme that way. And so I think that's part of the battle, if that makes sense, not to, because it's that all or nothing mindset.
So on one hand, you're like all in, nose to the grindstone. These are my words, not yours, but like nose to the grindstone, workaholic. And then on the other side,
I don't like that word.
Hey, you used it. It's not on
I know. I know.
And then on the other side, we've got like, well, I guess it could be kind of the same flavor. It sounds like whatever there is that's related specifically to Heather, it sounds like gets set aside in service of something, be it your partner, be it work. Is that about right?
Yeah. Except that the work is serving me, in that, like, I guess in some ways I need to, or I'm looking to create a structure and then somewhat stick to that structure when it comes to my business. And not just, I think using the term being pulled away easily is what I do. And serve someone else, not me.
Yeah, because it sounds like you wouldn't, if we were like having this conversation about you while you were at corporate, it sounds kind of like we would be having a different conversation. Like, I am imagining, and check my feet on this one, but it sounds kind of like if you were at corporate, everyone works at this company called corporate, I've noticed. If you were working for Corporate Inc., it sounds like you wouldn't have so much trouble. You wouldn't need to create a structure. You wouldn't need to like, how do I stick to this? It sounds like in that situation, you go straight for it. That's almost all you do. Is that right?
That would be really accurate, and would feel no guilt in, I can't talk right now.
Got it. Okay, great. So where would you like to get to by the end of this conversation? What would be like kind of a result for us to aim towards?
I'd like to stop doing that and be more, stand in more what I need.
Mm.
You know, like, and not feel guilty about it, I think, because I can do that, but then I struggle internally.
Got it. So it's either make time for everything, all of the world around Heather, but not Heather, or put Heather as the priority, but then feel like then you have to be with the burden of guilt. It sounds like that.
Yeah,
Great.
that's really perfect because it's like, it's either or.
That sounds smart. Either or, that sounds good. I've heard coaches use that before, so we'll make a note of that. I'm going to have fun while we do this too. Is that all right?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, good. You're allowed to as well. Okay, so what we're aiming towards is kind of, it sounds like really kind of get at what shifting whatever it is in the way, out of the way, so that you could not just focus, take on the thing that's there for you to take on, but also do so without guilt and without being pulled away towards whatever the other thing happens to be.
Yeah.
Is that about right?
That's totally right. I want
Excellent.
to not feel guilty, and or I want to manage that effectively so that I don't avoid what I want to do or need to do because of that guilt.
Awesome. Okay, great. It sure does. Let me make sure I heard you right there, actually. So you're part of what currently happens is you spend time managing the guilt. Is that right?
Yeah. Or, you know, or I defer my stuff so I don't feel guilty.
Right. Yeah, it makes total sense.
Okay.
So it's kind of like we could create all of the structure in the world, like the best structure. I don't know what it looks like, but we read all the books that tell you how to eat the frog and get up at 5 a.m. and all that stuff. And then
I've read them all.
Yeah, I bet you have. I bet you have. And you could probably implement those. And then what you're left with is you're doing all the stuff, but then there's this crushing burden of guilt, at which point it's almost kind of makes a lot of sense over here that from that place, there's just no structure sufficient to force you to be with that. It's kind of like everyone has a breaking point, and eventually you're going to say, screw this. I can't keep feeling this way. Mm-hmm. Is that kind of how it's gone?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good description.
Cool.
It's like a fight. It's kind of like an inner battle.
Tell me, like between those two things?
Yeah, well, it's kind of like kind of like the good and the bad. The good is serving others, and the bad is just serving myself. So again, it's that, you know, all or nothing.
Right. Got it.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, well, first let me check in. So I hear that with I think I'm hearing that it's your business where this is showing up, like you're putting attention on your partner or whatever other people need rather than work on your business. Is that right?
Yeah, that would be right. Like, yes, it's not that I don't, it's that I feel like I'm undisciplined.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Tell me a bit about that.
Well, I feel like I find myself, I use the term getting easily pulled away, which keeps me from, focusing on some kind of a structure. And I really hear what you're saying, like there is no perfect structure, but I mean, still there is about consistency. Like you're going to write every day, you're going to write every day. Right. And so I may have create something like that for myself. And then before you know it, it's like, well, can we do this? And I'm doing that. And that's not really what I want to do. But I do sometimes, right? And so it's like there's a loss for that consistency of practice, whatever that practice is for me that I need to create the success I want.
So let's say that we magically make this go away, resolved, address it. What's like the first thing, you're like, boy, if I could just get this handled here, then I would do this thing. Like, what is that thing that's sort of front and center that you wish you were just doing more if you could create all the discipline or whatever it was that you needed in the world?
Well, that's a good question.
It's the only type I ask.
I know, totally. Well, I use writing as example because I like to write, and I also, um, feel that that helps me put my work out into the universe, which I think is important to creating a presence in the world. The other thing is even like I want to create a biweekly online conversation.
Yep.
And so that requires structure and commitment and consistency. So those are two things that I want to do that I would say I'm not doing because I'm not standing in. That's a priority, I guess.
Right. So I want to point to first, like one thing that's happening that I'm hearing happen that's like super common, and like you're doing great. I want to make sure that you're clear on that, because it's easy when we're starting to get into this stuff. It can not always feel that way, which is we're starting to tease out what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hearing like you've got the solution. Or rather, you've got the problem and the solution for it together. So the problem is, oh, I'm not disciplined enough.
Right.
And the solution then is what?
I'll be more disciplined.
Get more disciplined. That's right. Yeah, it's perfect. It's so easy. And you just haven't read the right book yet, or you haven't, had the right coaching conversation, or been to the right event, or, whatever it happens to be.
Right.
So
that's true, right? It's like black and white.
Total. And it's what we all do too. That's like, I want you to really know that it's not like, oh, I'm so dumb, I shouldn't be doing that. That is human nature. It's why it's so hard for us to create change. It's why you and I, because you're a coach too, it's why we have jobs. It's because we can't see the forest for the trees. If I have a tree in front of my face, the obvious solution, if I want to go forward, is to take out my axe and cut the tree down. But then I take 3 steps forward and damn it, there's another tree, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So,
Totally.
okay, so I heard 2 things. One was you want to write. Mm-hmm. Is there something there for you right now in this moment?
Well, I don't think it really matters. What just came up for me is I don't think it really matters what it is I want to do, because the other thing is really the issue.
What's the other thing?
The other thing is allowing myself to be pulled away.
Right. But so we could look there. Mm-hmm. Do you get pulled away from everything? Did you get pulled away from corporate?
No.
What about if what's your, I'm not even going to ask that. We'll just leave that. What is your, and then I went right back to the question. If your partner needed your support, would you get pulled away from that?
No.
Even if there was something tugging at you, like Heather, like if I called you up and was like, Heather, I need your time right now, you would probably like be reliable to keep your time focused on that thing at hand, right?
Well, depending, I guess, on how important it was.
100%.
Okay.
But by and large, what I'm hearing is that at least for certain things, you getting pulled away is not an issue.
Right. And yes. Yeah. And I guess where I really get stuck though is that I know it has nothing to do with him. I know that intellectually, but it's like, so it comes back to why is that?
Right. So that's what we want to look at. So if we just put our attention on like, how do you not do a thing? Mm-hmm. Well, that's challenging for a number of reasons. One, because not doing a thing is like, that'd be a little bit like playing a game of how do I not walk in this 100-meter sprint?
Yeah.
Right. So it's just challenging for our brain. So that's the first thing. And when we put our attention there, we tend to do the thing that we're trying not to do.
Right.
The other thing is that it sounds like there's specific places where this shows up. And so my hunch, and I want you to check on this, but my hunch is that it's actually not getting pulled away that is the issue. It's that there's something about the things you say you want to do that make it especially enticing to be pulled away. Getting pulled away is actually like, a way of kind of avoiding the thing that you really want to do, but might be a little bit scary or have some sort of charge to it that would have you like, get away. I'm not right about that, but would you be up to explore that with me?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Yeah. So that's where I want to, like, let's just choose one of these things.
That's interesting.
Please share.
No, I just said that's interesting. That's
Good.
really interesting because that's like an angle that I really hadn't thought about it that way. That it's like a mechanism to avoid what I say I want to do for whatever reasons are there.
Yeah. And at the start of this conversation, at the start of this call, whatever this thing is that we're doing, I was sharing how I really believe anytime there's possibility available, there's also fear. So if there's like access to something new and entirely outside of what's predictable for me, it's also going to drive up a ton of fear because it's by definition going to be outside of my comfort zone. And the way biologically we sort of have evolved, outside your comfort zone equals tiger, which means your genes die. So don't follow that. So naturally, possibility and fear are kind of like siblings, if you like. So it makes sense to me. Not necessarily right. I want to look at this with you, but that, I wonder if. So let's choose one of these things that you want to do just so we have like something specific to actually look at.
Okay.
So pick one for us to make happen.
Okay. Well, let's do the, I want to do the bi-weekly online conversation.
Cool. And help me understand what that means, because it sounds fancy, and I'm not totally sure I know what a bi-weekly online conversation.
Well, that's because I'm creating it. So it means coming, like doing something similar to this, but coming with a topic and speaking to that topic, and then opening it up for conversation. So it's going to be real talk with Heather Beaton.
Cool. Time to get real. Great. Okay. Real talk. I'm just going to make a note here with Heather Beaton. Great. Okay.
And I'm thinking of bi-weekly because I feel like I can't get my shit together enough to do it weekly. Like that's an honest truth, right? I'm thinking, oh, well, I probably can't do it every week, right? I'm not saying that is right. I'm saying that's where my head's at.
Yeah, that's how it kind of currently occurs for you, we might say. Given your druthers, like if you could create this however you wanted, what would it look like? Would it be bi-weekly?
No.
What would it be?
Be weekly, because I think that creates what I actually want, which is a consistent presence.
Nice.
Right.
Got it. Do you already have like a day, time, anything like that in mind?
I just have to clarify that. That's what I say I want.
Of course.
I'm not doing it. Sorry, do I have a day or time? Yes, my day is Thursdays.
Thursdays at? Do you have that yet?
I do. Let me tell you. I think it's at 10 a.m.
Cool. Great time slot. I know other people that do live shows at 10 a.m. and they are fantastic.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I don't think those really are particularly relevant. I just want to ask them to get some some meat on the skeleton, so to speak.
Yeah, I have allergies, so excuse me.
You're totally fine. Sniffle away.
Okay.
Is it grass allergies? What kind of allergies do you have?
Yes. While I was out walking the dog this morning, I have something wrong with my eye and it runs, so it can be.
No.
Yeah. No, it's fine, but it's just why I'm.
You're just struck by emotion constantly. You're just so open.
I hope not.
Okay.
I work hard to control that.
Just going to make some notes here, okay? Going to make copious notes right now. So, back to the matter at hand. So we've got Real Talk with Heather Beaton, weekly, ideally, given like if you could create it however you wanted, Thursdays, 10 a.m. Really dangerous saying this stuff out loud on a live show,
Totally.
But I totally get it. So when let's just look at it through the lens. I'm not saying it is avoidance, but let's say it was. So if this was you avoiding, if choosing something else was a way of like avoiding this thing here. Why do you think that would be? Like, what do you think it is about Real Talk with Heather Beaton, Thursdays, 10 a.m. that would have you pull away from it?
Fear of failure.
Okay. And for the fundamental human sort of fear there, I see.
Yeah, well, and it's, that's the head talk, right?
Of
Or
course.
like, oftentimes, because I've been thinking about this a lot and, thinking about subjects and topics. And so, it pops up and I write it down and I've got this place where everything is. And it's like, I just need to get my shit together and get out there. Really. I think that's sometimes the struggle is the knowing, but the not acting around the knowing. And it's not that I know how it will be or anything. It's like, I create these stories though.
Sure. When you say the knowing, what is the knowing?
Well, I don't know that it will fail, but that's the fear. I don't know why I would think it will fail.
So you're like, it sounds like the knowing is kind of like, well, I know that that's just fear. And so why don't I just do the thing I'm afraid of? Like, I know I should just be willing, something like that.
Totally.
Got it.
That's the chatter. And I would say, I always say to people all the time, I've never done anything in my life that I don't have fear around, nothing.
Right.
But I still do it. So
is it scary for you to prioritize your partner?
Is it scary for me? I don't understand. I don't think.
Well, I heard you say there's nothing in your life that you do where you don't have fear around it.
Well, no, I don't mean it that way. I mean, nothing that I start new or step into new or, like a new job or anything like that. There's always fear.
Got it. Okay, yeah. Great. So one of the things I've noticed about fear, first of all, is that it doesn't respond. Fear tends to be irrational. And irrationality, when I was young, I was very arrogant. Now I'm older and I'm still quite arrogant, but at least I'm aware of that. When I was young, very arrogant, and I would get into I would try to debate with people that had what I believed to be an irrational position. Mm-hmm. And what I noticed was it didn't matter. Like, I'd try to bring all the rational arguments in the world and be like, here's why your point's wrong and how, blah, 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 here's all the scientific evidence. Didn't make a difference. Have you ever had an experience like that?
Yes, my stepson is like that. and seriously, and he's super, super intelligent, but he's like that.
Yeah.
Like super intelligent. But yeah. I mean, sometimes hard to have a conversation with because everything is a debate.
Yeah. And one of the things that really stuck with me was one of the people I really admired said, if someone has arrived at a conclusion from a non-logical place, so they haven't like thought it hasn't been like a bunch of logic that got them there, they arrived there somewhere else, then trying to use logic to move them off of that position will not work. It just can't work. I noticed that fear is the same way. Mm-hmm. That fear tends to be quite irrational. We can rationalize it and be like, well, I know this and I know that and blah, 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 blah. And yet fear is like, I don't care. I'm over here being scary. Mm-hmm. You can think your way as much as you want. So first question, how is it working trying to rationalize that fear? Is that working for you? Is it making a difference?
No, it doesn't change anything. And I guess my experience, my life experience knows that it's not rational and that it's not real. I mean,
totally.
But still, like, it never goes away.
Mm-hmm. Great. I've noticed that too. So that's just one thing for us to notice, like, no wonder knowing, because what I heard you said is, I don't get it. I know that it's not real and yet it's still there. And actually what I'm hearing both of us kind of reach as a conclusion is like, no wonder it's not going away from knowing. Fear doesn't work that way. It's just kind of not the way it goes.
But it is really irrational.
Totally. Yeah. The second thing I notice about fear is that it works by staying vague and murky, kind of like the monster underneath the bed. And the way the monster underneath the bed works is don't look, because if you look, it'll devour your face. So don't look. Of course, if you get out the flashlight and put your head under the bed, what do you notice?
There's no monster.
Nothing. Takes all the power of the monster away, right?
Yeah.
And what the monster does is it enrolls us, it convinces us, don't fucking look here. It's dangerous. And so what we do is we don't look, and it develops. The fear grows, it becomes more pronounced. We start to add accoutrement to it. We give it horns and cool fangs and maybe a blood dripping down one side, whatever. And so I see, like, it sounds kind of funny with this monster under the bed example, but that's what I notice happens with our fear too. So what I noticed about the fear you shared was like, oh, fear of failure, which is kind of like about as broad as we could have it, right? It's really all we're ever scared of. And the only reason we're scared of failure is because underneath failure is death. If I fail at this, then I will die, or I'll be kicked out of my tribe and then I will die, and et cetera, et cetera. So what do you think might be, like, if we were to drill into that a little bit and get a little more specific, what's the flavor of failure that is scary for you?
The flavor?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in that specific situation or in general? I don't think I understand your question.
Both. So like in this situation, you imagine like, oh, I'll take on Real Talk, Heather Beaton, Thursdays, 10 a.m. And like, what are you afraid might happen, or about how it might go?
I guess failure there would be that there's no uptake.
Like no one shows up?
Yeah. And to me that, I would assume originally that will be the case because it takes time to build that.
Stop. Now you're getting rational. Notice that?
Yeah.
So
okay.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Hold on. Can I pause you?
Yeah.
Can I give you a practice here to take on?
Yeah.
So unfortunately for you, you're a very smart woman. Sorry. And the trap of that is you're going to try to rationalize this stuff. Mm-hmm. So would it serve you to just start noticing when you're rationalizing with your fear that way?
Mm-hmm. Yes, because that's where I go all the time.
Awesome. So would you take that on as a practice, just noticing when that machine starts up?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Would you like me to give you a sec to write that down?
No, but perhaps point it out when I do that.
Oh, don't worry. For the next half hour, it's going to be really obnoxious.
Well, yeah.
And of course, anyone that watches us that then you're in relationship will be like, seems like you're rationalizing that fear. And you're like, shut up, I hate you. You go on that thing. Okay.
Okay.
So I want to make an assertion.
Okay.
Rationalizing our fear is an attempt to not have to be with it.
Mm-hmm.
Rationalizing our fear is an attempt to not have to be with it. So I want, if you hold it that way, let's actually just have you sit with the fear rather than try to get away from it, rather than try to fix it or move it out of the way or any of that stuff. So no one shows up. Let's just be with that for a starting point. You do this show, no one shows up. What about that is scary?
Well, that's really not scary. Like when I think about it.
What about the answer to my question?
What's scary about it?
What about it is scary?
Well, I guess that it's not interesting.
So you're not interesting then?
Yeah.
Or is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
I want to go right to rationalizing that thought.
Great. So here's something that's really cool about that. That's a diagnostic for you.
Yeah.
That tells you, oh, there's something here that I'm having a hard time just being with.
Yeah.
Can you think of other places in your life where you've had this experience where you're like feeling maybe uninteresting or boring, we could call it, or whatever word you want to use, where you're like, like you try to fix it, you try to explain to yourself why you're not interesting, can you think of other places where that might show up?
Oh, at networking events. Probably.
Say a little more.
Well, just my tendency is to, well, I don't like them for one thing, but why don't I like them is is the discomfort, I think, of that closeness and connection and putting it out there, whatever it is.
What's risky about being close and in connection with someone?
What's risky? Well, the sense of not being good enough. Totally.
What is your, go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, just totally, I don't have an example, but just in essence, not being good enough.
What is the flavor of not being good enough for you? Like, for some people, not being good enough means they're not generous enough. For some people, it's like they're not smart enough. Are you able to get even one step further? You're doing awesome, but like one step below that, like, what is my particular flavor of not being good enough?
That makes me sad.
Thanks for sharing that.
I think probably not being smart enough.
Yeah, me too.
No, this is not my allergy.
But you could blame it on that.
Yeah.
Well, really, Heather, so I just want to acknowledge you for even the shift in your being that happens as you're willing to like go, down. We're a little closer to the fear, right? Your body is like, oh, I'm going to have a physical reaction to the proximity to that fear.
Yeah.
So we've kind of got not interesting. Say that again.
Which I don't want.
You say that a lot, but I also am a little skeptical because otherwise you wouldn't have said yes to this. So I trust there's a part of you that does want some of what's here.
Well, I recognize that that's the key to moving forward.
Right. So we've got not interesting and we've got not smart.
Yeah.
Which of those feels are they both present? Does one feel more present than the other as far as real talk with Heather Beaton, Thursdays at 10 a.m. Pacific?
I think the not smart enough, that is a driver everywhere.
Great. So what are I'm going to start yodeling. What are some of the ways that you avoid that in your life? Or protect from having it happen, or, whatever.
I would say being quiet.
Okay. What else?
I think the engaging really not like at a surface level to sort of, which, it's kind of like being quiet, but more, not that I wouldn't engage, but more that it's, the focus is more on the other.
That's such a great one, right?
Definitely, yes.
It's like you'd be a great networker, but also be like, boring, not really getting seen.
Yeah.
If you went to networking events.
Yeah, well, sometimes I do, but they're not my passion, that's for sure.
Okay. Give me 2 more things you do to handle, manage, deal, avoid with this fear.
Oh, I overcompensate to make sure that I know it all beforehand. Like if it's a subject matter expert thing, you know? So like over prepare, no doubt.
Right. Great lawyer technique.
Um, what else did I do? I can't think of anything else.
What's that?
I can't think of anything else.
We'll take a guess then. What might be one other thing?
Not going. Like totally avoiding it.
Don't show up.
Yeah.
Great. What are you present to? Like, what are you noticing or hearing from this conversation we're in with respect to what you're not taking on, like where we started in this conversation?
Mm-hmm. What am I noticing?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
What are you getting? What are you taking away?
um, well, what I get, what comes to mind when you say that is just like this is a theme through my life,
Mm.
and what I get, you know, where my head goes is like, of course, that it's not rational, but also too that it's annoying because it seems to have so much power.
Yeah. Yeah, I really get that one. I think our fear is one of the most powerful things. You know, it's really allowed us to survive. It has to be powerful. It kind of cheesy. The only thing I know more powerful than fear is love. Um, and I don't think it has to keep you held in check. And the cool thing is you're actually doing the work. So let me offer something. This is, I want to be clear, not so much coaching as me offering something I've noticed. Clear? So what I notice is that we as humans develop things we're afraid to be with. We're afraid of, ultimately. And then there's things in life, circumstances, people, situations, experiences that drive up that fear. So for example, if I'm afraid of being or looking or sounding stupid, then being around really, really smart people will tend to drive up that fear. Make sense so far?
Yeah, totally.
So then what we as humans do is we learn to create strategies to avoid those things that drive up our fear.
Yeah.
Or when we can't avoid those things, we create strategies to kind of compensate for or overcome our fear. So I might like eschew smart people and be like, they're so arrogant and stupid. I'm going to spend time over here. And when I can't, I might like make damn sure that I've done all the research in the world, or I might be really good at arguing to prove that I'm right. Because if I'm right, you're wrong, and I'm clearly smart. Otherwise, you would have been right, et cetera. And then we use these strategies. You may have heard me say this before. We use these strategies to succeed in the world. Mm-hmm. Does this sound familiar at all so far?
Totally.
So of course, Heather, of course you can see this throughout your life, right? It sounds like you've had a vested interest in not feeling stupid, because over here, I have the benefit of seeing you outside of your wacky head, and I can see like, wow, this is a woman who's like got crazy cool hair and like really neat glasses. Like she couldn't be uninteresting if she tried, and she's clearly brilliant. She's thinking constantly. Her brain won't damn well shut up. It's just super clear to me that you're brilliant, and like you create fascination in the spaces that you go into. And I've gotten the gift of getting to spend time in a room with you because you came to one of our intensives. So I get to be with you in person too. But even if I hadn't, I'd be present to that. So of course you would be afraid of not being those things. It's just the way our fear works. You're brilliant. You're going to be afraid of looking stupid. Does this make sense?
Yeah, I never think of myself as brilliant.
Very clear. Super clear. So,
but I want to tell you why.
Sure, you can.
Well, maybe I shouldn't.
Would you like to?
Not really, but I will.
Okay.
Only because I think this drives it is that, sorry, I never finished high school. And so that's kind of always driven that. And yet, you know, my rational side is that's not rational at all because I'm highly educated and everything else at this point in my life, but it's that underlying piece, sort of. I think that's it.
Yeah, it's like a piece of evidence that your fear can always point back to, right? Well, you may have done all these things and worked at corporate and like excelled in ways that other people could never have done without a GD. Yeah. But still, here's this thing that I can point to prove. So that's the other thing our fear does for us is it gathers evidence to support it.
Right.
At least in that way, it's kind of rational.
Yeah, that's true. But I do think that that's an underpinning and maybe not, but it seems to be.
Yeah. So just to recap,
okay.
We create fears. We have fears about ourselves. Certain situations, experiences, people, whatever, drive those fears up. And so what we learn to do is avoid being with those elements of life so that we don't have to be with our fear. With me so far?
Yeah, totally.
And if we go even further, like we've seen it happen a bit on this call, every time we start to touch the fear a little bit, there's a part of you that wants to run up into your head and rationalize it to eliminate the fear. Can you see how that would fit inside this pattern that we're talking about?
Totally. And I don't want to feel that. Like, that's why I go there.
100%. Yeah. Brilliant. It's a brilliant solution. Yeah. I want you to get that.
Yeah.
Now, if we looked at this through, so on the one hand, you can do this and it's gotten you pretty far. And on the other hand, it's now having some consequences. Like it means you always go away from the stuff that might be confronting like this fear. And at this point, there's some things you want in life that lie on the other side of this fear, like Real Talk with Heather Beaton. There's a risk that you're going to say something and people will go, well, you're dumb. Here's my opinion. I think you're wrong. Mm-hmm. True?
Yep.
So from the lens of like that monster under the bed metaphor we used, what do you see there is to do here? Or what might there be?
Well, I think that I just need to do it anyway.
Do what anyway?
What I want to do, like do the weekly talk and whatever it is that I'm afraid of, look under the bed.
Yeah, it's great. Like doing it will definitely be a way to confront that fear.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
And it might be a high gradient. Right. So you can take that on. Like if you're sort of like, wow, I can see that it's the avoidance of that fear. Now I'm going to fuck you, fear. I'm going to take it on. And sometimes that's all we really need. You know, that's where people would say like, all you need is an insight and everything will shift. And sometimes that's the case. You're just like, oh, it's not that I need to stop caring about other people. It's that I'm just running, like I'm avoiding what's really scary for me, really scary. And you have great evidence to be afraid of it. And other times that particular gradient is just like above our pay grade in the moment. You know, like if you were like, Adam, scale this mountain face, I'd be like, nope, I'll scale this mountain face first. And then we'll start to work our way up. So one practice you could take on is do it anyway.
Right.
Do the fucking thing. What's a lower gradient way that you could practice being with this fear?
Hmm. I'm not sure. I'm not sure because I think that, I mean, I don't know. I mean, to me, the way to the other side is through it. So I don't know what a lesser way would be to get there.
Well, are you present to other places where you like, where else in your life might you be kind of avoiding having to be with this fear, this particular fear?
I would say in connecting to enroll clients.
Okay, great.
Sure.
Does it show up just in straight up connecting, or is it only when you're connecting so as to enroll a client?
I think more with enrolling a client.
Got it. So when there's kind of like something on the line, then
yes, I would say
fine.
that's a good descriptor. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. What's one more place you can see this showing up?
I would say sometimes putting out what I think when I know it doesn't align with somebody else's opinion, more in a personal relationship than in a work relationship. I have no issue with that. In a personal relationship, yes, because I would tend to hold back.
Nice. Great. So kind of like when you have an opinion, you're like, I have a different opinion. That's a place where you might just like avoid putting that forward because they might say, you're dumb. That opinion is dumb and so are you. Something like that?
Yeah. Yes. And again, it yes, I noticed that about me. I know that I am much more able to do that now than I used to be, but it's still, there is that hesitation of just being me there,
Nice.
even if it doesn't align with someone else, and not in a general way, but say with my partner, right?
Awesome. Okay, I've got some things for you to practice, but what do you see you might take on then? Given now we've got some examples on the table, some different levels of gradient.
I think just really like the connection for myself of being aware that that's what's going on for me. And I think what you said about just being with that, noticing it, and then like the word that comes to me is like to push through, right? Like everything's always hard, and I don't want it to be hard. It's just like it should be, or I want it to be just okay, just to be, and that's my view, and it's okay if it's not your view.
Yeah, nice.
And it's not, I just want to add, it's not that I won't say that, but I'd like to have a different sense of comfort.
Yeah.
Because I will say that, but it's like harder.
Yeah. Yeah, I really get it. So I want to spoil this for you a little bit, like a spoiler, which is that in my experience, like some people will tell you, work with me for 4 days, whatever, your fear will disappear, or wear these glasses and I'll flash lights in your eyes and you won't have fear. That's not my experience of how transformation happens.
Mm-hmm.
The way in my life it happens is the fear doesn't go away. It kind of like I learn to overcome it in this area, and then I start playing a bigger game, and then, oh crap, the same fear's back.
Yeah.
So you better believe coming onto this conversation, a lot of fears about looking dumb and being boring and not good enough and blah, 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 blah. What I do notice though, that shifts across the board is my relationship to the fear.
Mhm.
So instead of it being like, oh my God, I have to get away from that, or even before that, like not even being aware that that's what's showing up, we just automatically go over here. We're like, whoop, I don't know why, but I have to run in this direction really fast.
Yeah.
We start to be like, oh, that's my fear, and I'm going to run in this direction. And then over time, we start to be like, that's my fear, and I'm going to let it sit right there. And then, make sense?
Yeah, totally.
So,
Yes.
I'm enjoying the action poses. The feed is playing delayed on another window below me, and it's distracting me, but it's fun for me.
That's good though, because I could see that in my practice, in my behavior. You know.
Yeah, nice, good catch. So here are some things that I would offer, and I want to be clear. If you do, I'm going to give you a number. And if all you did, Heather, was a single one of these 3 times, you're going to be shifting something. So I want you to get, it's not, hold on, people are messaging me. Get out of here, people. It's not like you got to do all these things or you suck. That's the voice in my head, just so you know, that's how it sounds. So you may not have that at all, but that's kind of what I can tend to do with this. It's really just like, we're going to give you a number of places you could practice and then take on what you take on.
Okay.
So I love the idea, I think I heard you say this, which is just noticing this dynamic show up.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like you've identified putting your stuff to the side in service of someone else
Mm-hmm.
is a bit of like, that's one of the ways you get to avoid being with this fear.
Yeah.
So when you notice yourself doing that, rather than trying to like hit yourself in the back of the head with a stick, you might just ask yourself the question, what am I afraid of? What's the fear that I'm avoiding right now?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'll wait until you've got that.
Okay.
Often I would rather give you a place to practice sort of into rather than away from. So right now it's like, I'm going to practice not letting this fear stop me, which is a little bit like, I'm going to practice not doing a thing, which is not as powerful as like, I'm doing this so as to create this. And we only have so much time and we're limited by that. And so, you know, it would be part of a larger conversation, and you're in the Forge with us. So this may be a conversation that we grow together, but I would invite you to take on like a lower gradient thing that would be a way of confronting this fear. And so it might be like, write something that you believe to be true and share it somewhere, social media or vocally with a friend, but just like once per week, I'm going to share a truth that is a little scary for me to share.
Okay. Okay. I like that.
Yeah. When is your first show going to be?
Next Thursday.
So 6 days from now?
Yep.
Cool. Everyone, you heard that. The thing about this is that we get to actually create some accountability. And I want you to get, Heather, that just in, I don't know how that felt for you, but like just in the act of speaking that, you create that possibility.
Yeah.
What would you need to do to, like, is there any risk of that not happening?
Nope.
Nice. So then here's the only other thing I would offer is notice that fear when it shows up during that time.
Okay.
Notice your desire to rationalize it.
Yeah. That's a big one for me.
Yeah, me too. I'm so good at it. And then here's the third part is share it.
Okay. Okay.
So the crux of all of this is that as humans, we are afraid to feel afraid.
I know.
That's what rationalization, that's what a lot of anxiety, at least that I notice, not a chronic anxiety system, but like someone who's got anxiety in the moment, it's often about a fear of feeling afraid. And so if we think enough about it, we don't have to feel the thing because we're up here, we don't have to come down here. So we're going to wind down there. I'm going to acknowledge you before we finish up, and then you and I will, I think what we're going to do is quickly run to the bathroom and then come back and do a debrief. Okay. Does that feel good? Yeah. Before we wind down this part, is there anything left for you to have this be complete?
No, I think it's been great.
Cool.
Although difficult.
Yeah, I get it. You're the courageous one on this call. This is much easier for me than for you. I just want to read you this comment from Trish, who wrote, "Thank you, Heather, for raising your hand and taking this on. This was such a gift." Yeah, thanks for letting that in.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. May I acknowledge you to finish up? Is there anything in particular you'd like me to acknowledge you for?
No.
No way. I'm not going to say anything. So I want to acknowledge you for your brilliance, first of all, for just clearly being like, I would just say ahead of the curve, you know, being able to not get, I'm going to call it not being able to not get a GD rather than failing to graduate, like being able to not get one and then to succeed in the ways that you've succeeded is really remarkable. And I really want to acknowledge you for your heart and the part of you that's like, and that's not enough. Like, I beat that system, it's not enough. I want to make a bigger difference than the one that I can make from this place. And that requires a ludicrous amount of humility, like a willingness to be humbled and to be courageous, which feels crappy. And you were such a gift. And the last thing I really want to acknowledge you for is your radiance. You look like my age. I'm pretty sure you're a little older than me, but you look so young. And it's not just that you look young, it's that your being is young. There is a youthful radiance to your being. Thanks for having cool hair, cool glasses, a cool background behind you. Thanks for being anything but uninteresting. And thanks for being the one to go first.
Oh, thank you.
Like, I'm honored that you said yes.
It's a gift for me too.
Good. Okay, everyone, all two of you watching, hang tight. We're going to go to the bathroom and then we're going to come back and do a debrief. Sound good?
Sound good.
All right, we'll be right back. We're going to turn our cameras off first and then we'll return. See you soon, Heather. Okay, while we wait for Heather to come back, I'm going to pour a little more tea. Oh, what a relief. No more urgency in my body. So over the next half hour, what Heather and I are going to do is we're going to debrief how it went, what happened. Heather I'll check in with her and see like, what did she notice? What did she experience? What did she think was going to happen versus what didn't? And for anyone watching, please share any questions you have about anything that occurred, because I can't stress the importance of that. It's easy for us to try our best to have that conversation and to sort of guess, oh, you can come back, Heather, and to try and like guess at what people might be curious about. But when you give the generous gift of asking a question, it it really opens up something for everyone. So you're not asking a question just for yourself. You're asking a question for everyone that's going to view this video, every coach that might have a similar question to yours. So thanks in advance. And I promise I won't resent you guys too much if you don't bring any questions whatsoever. Just a little, just the right amount. Well, welcome back, Heather.
Thank you.
Well, how was that for you? Like, we'll just start really broad.
It was, well, it was really positive, but really uncomfortable. And sorry, I was just gonna say it's really uncomfortable because it feels vulnerable and raw.
Yeah, it felt like there was this point where, you know, we were talking about your fear, and then it felt like there was this kind of moment where you actually allowed yourself to be your fear a little bit, like you actually touched it as opposed to talking about it. Is that how it occurred for you?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's do you ever have that moment with your clients? Because you're a coach, like, is that an experience you have with your clients?
Totally. But yes, and it's way easier to be on the other side.
Debatable. Debatable for sure.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
I noticed for me that I mean, first of all, like you, like me, a lot of my people have a lot of brilliance. And if there's one thing that brilliant, I'm going to turn these bright lights down a bit. If there's one thing that brilliant people are good at doing, it's talking about stuff. We tend to be exquisite at talking about stuff. And so I often notice in conversations, I can kind of start to feel like, oh, this is a really fascinating conversation. It's really interesting. And I'm not feeling, it doesn't feel scary. It doesn't feel edgy. It doesn't feel like this is a powerful conversation. It feels like an interesting conversation. And usually for me, that's a sign, one, that I'm avoiding creating whatever intimacy would bring us there. And two, that like, we're probably not yet actually on the sort of thing that can really create a shift.
Yeah. And I think I said that to you one time before, like that's where I want to go as a coach, is more, you know, into that versus staying up on the surface, because it isn't rewarding to be on that surface. Like it isn't helpful, but it's also not rewarding. And and I worked with coaches and you know, certainly observed lots of that work where I like, that's why I like your work. That's why I like Rich Lippman's work, is because it does go deep. And to me, it impacts me. So that I want to be more able to get there.
Yeah. I find it's rewarding for me in the sense, like the way scratching a mosquito bite is. You know, it's like, oh, okay, that sort of short term, I feel better, but it doesn't really it doesn't shift anything.
Yeah.
That's the thing I notice. Just want to read you, Evan wrote, Evan, who you know from the intensive. I'm going to share actually. So Heather and I know each other. I haven't shared this with who's watching yet, but Heather and I know each other, one, because I think our mutual friend Jeff Harmon put us in touch, because turns out we live on the same beautiful island. And Heather attended the intensive in May with Bay and I, and then now is a member of the Forge for the next 6 to 7 months. And Evan was also at the intensive. So Heather and Evan know each other from there. And Evan said, thank you, Heather. I totally get you, both for the rationalization and for the discomfort. Evan can do that game pretty well too. Also a brilliant, brilliant man. And he supports you 100% for what I acknowledged you for. So kind of piggybacking on my acknowledgement rather than really giving you his own, but that's fine. We'll allow that for this session. Couple things I was present to was when we first started, you had like a clear sort of thing to fix. And usually that's a flag for me. I don't know about you, but anytime a client brings like, okay, I think I had a conversation yesterday with someone like this where it was like, I always get bogged down in the details. So help me figure out how to not do that, which is always like, okay, warning sign.
Yeah.
And I really believe anytime there's a thing we think we're doing too much, it's actually not about the thing we're doing too much. It's that that's the place we go when we're afraid of something. That's what we use to avoid confrontation. So for example, if someone, and I'm curious to hear your take on this, Heather, but like if someone came to me and said, oh, I'm procrastinating all the time, how do I solve it? We know how you solve procrastination. You pick up the fucking pencil and you do the work. So it's not about solving procrastination. It's that they're avoiding some sort of thing.
Yeah, so that was totally a revelation, actually.
Mm.
That because that was not on my radar at all. So so this has been like, that's really, really helpful because I was stuck in that, well, it's that I'm not disciplined and that I'm not committed, which is not who I am. So
Not at
that
all.
wasn't the issue. But I was battling, why is that? Like, why is that the issue and it's not the issue? So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Very good.
Well, thank you. I want to be clear that that's co-created. So that's like, thanks for being a part of that conversation so we could get there together. And I love that. I'm trying to get the wording you said, which was convinced you're not disciplined enough while simultaneously knowing that's not who you are.
Yeah.
And usually those paradoxes in ourselves where it's like, I'm doing this thing and it's not who I am. And then we kind of forget, we set aside that paradox rather than get curious about that. We then go to like, okay, well, I just got to fix the thing. If I can just crush that, then I could solve that. And that would make everything go further.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's really where I was stuck.
Hmm. Were there any points where you were like, did you feel resistance or like, where the heck are we going? Or like, I'm curious, any human moments, if you like, that you want to share?
No, I didn't have any issues with where we were going. For me, the issue is wanting to hold back the emotion. So the resistance would be to try and divert this discussion in a different direction, right? Which I didn't do. But that's the comfort zone.
Right. I got to pause this conversation and go talk to my partner. He needs my support right now.
Totally. Totally. Well, what really struck me too was though when you said about the corporate, was that an issue in the corporate? And I said no, because I was coming from the place of where I started, which is not getting sucked away, right? Like,
right.
And I'm allowing myself to be pulled away. So that was interesting just to think, oh yeah, like that's not the case in the corporate. Like that wasn't my experience.
Right.
So when I look at that, so if my partner phoned me and I was busy, I'd say, I can't talk to you, but here it's like, okay, I just stop and go sometimes, right? Which irritates me about that. That's where I was stuck though. So that helped me see, oh yeah, it's really not about that. Like when you talked about the corporate piece, that helped me see, oh yeah, that's interesting. It was like, oh yeah, okay, I can see that's really not what's going on here.
Yeah. One of the places I've seen this before is people who are amazing at selling someone else's products, even someone else's coaching, and then cannot seem to generate their own practice. And it's like, of course, like on the one hand, it's like, that's really weird. You'd think it would be easy. And then on the other hand, it makes total sense because selling someone else's product, you don't have to put yourself out there and confront that fear.
Right.
Selling yourself, I'm just going to stop, or we get all weird or awkward or, all of those sort of things.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see any of the stuff that we've talked about in your own clients or people that you're in conversation with?
Totally. But I think that, yes, for sure.
What was the but?
But I think that where I don't serve them well enough is by skating past it instead of staying in it, which is what I do for myself. So,
yeah, but Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, but that's the shift I want to make in coaching, in my coaching, because I know that takes it to a different level.
One of the things I think is really cool is that as we start to see like the skating past, it starts to become, at first, all of this is below the surface. Fear of failure sounds good, great, we move on, next conversation, we kind of bounce around and then nothing actually shifts. Now, every time you hear your client say that, at first you may keep going past it, but it's gonna like niggle at you and you're gonna be like, I think that might be one of those places. And the next time you can hear it a little bit louder, until eventually you're like, oh, fuck it. I have to, like, it's killing me. And that's one of the beautiful things that I think can happen from some awareness.
Well, and the thing is, my own fear of going there for myself shows up in not going there for my clients.
Let me make sure I heard that right. Your own fear of going there for yourself. So kind of like, because you're avoiding that with yourself, then you're also avoiding taking your clients there.
Yeah, because I might put my assumptions that they'll be uncomfortable there too.
Yes.
Based on how I feel.
Which they will be. They probably will be, you know?
Yeah, but it's like trying to protect them from what I don't like, which is not serving them. Totally.
Yeah. Well, and thanks for sharing that, because I really want to emphasize, I think this is one of the reasons you know, and probably most people watching know, I really am an advocate for, an advocate's a nice way to put it. Sometimes it's a little less advocate-y that I am about this, but like that coaches need coaches, because if, like you beautifully put it, if we have to avoid that in ourselves, and B, can't see it because it's in our blind spot, then inevitably we're just not going to create the situation for our clients because it's uncomfortable and we don't even realize that we're avoiding it. It just feels like, well, of course it's fear of failure. I solved that. Let's solve this problem over here because this is the thing that really matters. And if we can do that, then we can move on and then things will work the way they're meant to work. Yeah. Trish, can you actually share specifically what you saw? Trish is just saying, sounds like I think that means you, has a new practice. Can you just write out what you heard there as the practice for Heather so she can get the gift of that? Because I'm not sure specifically what it might be. A couple of things I noticed for myself, or just sort of showing up in this conversation, was one, pretty quickly, I felt like, okay, there's the flag. It's not about fixing Heather's discipline or something like that. And I was pretty sure that this was a way of avoiding some experience that you were afraid might happen. And I was also like, okay, I'm going to lean back because I'm feeling pretty sure. I'm going to lean back. I'm going to ask a lot more questions than I might normally so that I can be curious about what's going on and allow you to start to pull that stuff out. Because what I've noticed, and maybe you've noticed this too, Heather, is seeing something ourselves is much more powerful than someone putting it in front of us. And I find coaching is always a bit of a dance where I'm like, okay, I'm going to put these dots like this for the client. And sometimes I need to move them a bit closer together so they can connect them. And sometimes I'm like, whoops, I kind of just gave it all to them. And yeah.
Yeah, no, I felt like it was like a discovery to get there, because I could see now really stuck in that this is the problem. And I just need to do it, and then it's solved. Like, like seriously, I just need to do what I say I'm afraid of and just smarten up.
Yes. And that's another thing that was present for me was like, great, what's the practice you might take on? You're like, oh, just fucking do the thing. I'll just run up that cliff face. And so working with I think we're sort of looking like things coaches can take on, and working with a gradient can be really helpful. And hey, if Heather went and did that, if you go and take the thing on, and it's cool because you made a declaration to do it, awesome. You're going to get to confront the fear and see how that is and be with it. And I think that's an amazing gift too. And sometimes we want to give a variety of options so people can practice at different levels rather than just dive straight on in.
That's
Trish
really,
says,
sorry.
oh, go ahead,
I
Heather.
was going to say that's really interesting though, because it's my nature very much all or nothing. So doing half or, a gradient was kind of like, I don't, I don't get that. I don't do that. But that's a great way to think of it though.
Yeah. Yeah. And all we're doing is creating options. So
I
now you have
totally.
more choices available to you. And the cool thing I think is one, stuff like this where we're who we be is the avoidance of that fear. So if the fear was I'm dumb, for example, then it's not just that you're afraid of being dumb, it's that you actually become I'm dumb, or you become I'm afraid of being dumb, or another way you could put it is you become I'm not dumb. And then everything you do is a function of I'm not dumb. So you would avoid a situation that would have you feel that way. And
Mm.
the neat thing about that is you could practice with real talk Heather Beaton, or you could practice over here or over there because your being is everywhere. So we don't need to create a practice that necessarily relates back to that thing, or we can, that's great, but then we can also create practices all over Heather's life or whoever's life, because if they practice in one place, they're practicing in every place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay, that's awesome.
Trish shared that the practice she heard was that you noticed your stuff in your clients and that you're avoiding going there with them. So with this new practice, you can now begin leaning in a little bit more with them.
Mm-hmm.
And one way you can do that, like the gentlest way sometimes, is to share like, hey, I was getting coached, and one of the things I noticed was I had this vague high level kind of thing in my fear, and I was talking a lot about it, but I was kind of avoiding feeling it. And it feels a little bit like we might be in that conversation together right now. Does that feel like that to you, or is that just me? So you're kind of giving the reins back over to them, letting them make a decision.
Great.
Heather, what, if any, questions do you have? And it's okay if you have none.
I don't.
Awesome.
I want to thank you though. It's been really positive and like really positive, and I learned something really helpful.
I love that. One, it would be super cool if you would, the coolest thing would be if you'd come back at some point and write a comment underneath this and just share, hey, here's a way I practiced. So that everyone that's commented and been a part of this can get the gift of seeing like, oh, wow, that's sort of what happened from it.
Okay.
But that's optional. You don't have to do that. And the other thing that just came to mind is that sometimes the thing we're afraid of does happen, because that's as much a part of life too, right? So what we want is like we sort of try to convince ourselves, oh, I'm afraid people are going to call me stupid, but I know they won't. There's no point of worrying about that. So I just have to trust that they're not going to call me stupid. And it's like, actually, sometimes people will be people and they'll do stupid people-y things and they'll call you stupid, like I just did somehow. And so that's the other part of it, is if we can be okay with that, if we can practice just being with that, then everything shifts. We don't need people to show up any differently. So I wanted to make that point because I remember, I think at one point you were trying to convince yourself that there was almost no likelihood that the fear would happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always more interested in supporting people to be okay regardless of what happens, rather than convince themselves that the fear is just flat out not gonna be a factor.
Yeah, especially anything online.
Totally. Yeah. People be jerks. I have noticed that. I have this practice these days. It's like a diagnostic where I'm a human like the rest of us, and I can get into the Facebook scroll, and I try to avoid it. I don't have the app on my phone, still log in from time to time, but I notice it because I start to feel really toxic. Like I get really judgmental and arrogant and righteous, and I start thinking awful, sarcastic, jerky things to write to what people have posted. And I'm like, oh, hold on. This is just not, don't do this, Adam. Just log off.
Mm-hmm.
There's a part of you that can have that darkness. It's not really who you are, nor who you're committed to being. So let's just not do that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow, I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that.
Heather, thanks so much for being the first. It's a treat. Everyone who joined us, thank you. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for, actually, I don't think anyone asked any questions, but thanks for the supportive comments. I will speak for myself. It really, really makes a difference. And it requires something from it. It's not free to be in this conversation. All of the stuff we all are afraid of, all of the stuff, hey, Maria, all of the stuff that kind of, that we just have in the way where we're like, I don't want to do that because it's scary for these reasons. That's all here. Believe you, both Heather and I are feeling that. So thanks so much for your support, guys. And we will see you next Friday. Heather, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're going to end there. How do I do that? I think I